Oh my gosh. Absolutely incredible work.
So good. I love it.
Who wants to tackle doing some feedback first?
Just to check, this person was responsible for everything. Like everything we see here, he created.
I think that is, oh my gosh, the implication here.
Because it's amazing. Yeah.
What the heck is
It
going
is
on?
very good. What's that audio?
Yeah, it's
I can hear
That's
some
Marty.
random audio.
must be someone's audio coming through. But wait, where do you begin? It's
It's so good. Okay,
yeah,
so I want to begin right off the bat with just like the level of presentation that is involved in this. The animation I feel like is like really stellar, but also it feels like there's a chance that you use something that is a very known property. I might need to resize the window a bit. Sorry, everybody. I'm futzing with my stuff here. When you use something that's a known property, especially like Adventure Time, that's a really popular show. And I feel like a lot of animators are really familiar with what the animation style looks like. And when you choose a really well-known property like this, people could get really nitpicky. If you're like, man, that does not feel like Adventure Time at all. But that's not the case here. I mean, right off the bat, the color choices, the design of these little fly enemies, like the really jangly, bendy movements, they feel like very on model for these characters. And I don't know where you got this Jake rig, but it looks like you just took like a literal cylinder and added some other cylinders to it. I don't know if you made that yourself or what, but it feels awesome. The only
There's-
thing, oh, go ahead, Nick, if you want.
oh, sorry, I was just scrubbing through. There's some really lovely, just like doubling in some of these hits here.
Yeah, those are
Good to
cool.
point out. That really helps with like multi hits feeling like really good. I know we saw some where they didn't. We could see, you could contrast it with some that didn't do that, and just the impact is still very different. Um, yeah. Anyway, sorry, just a random aside.
I think that's great. I think the one thing I was going to say that kind of gets me is literally right at the very end where you have this big wipe into these characters, and then they are, oh, why is it off the, I see what you're saying now. Sorry, for some reason it's like zoomed in a little. There we go. They're totally static. Like the whole background is like really dynamic. You have the smoke from the trail, but this actual pose, I would have loved to see some breathing and maybe even held just a little bit longer to really get a look at this. You did a good job of making it feel really wild rifty with like Finn and Jake, the adventurers. You added some like fake stats, and you added some icons here, and even some like other screenshots, I guess, of potential skins. Which is like great. I specifically like this like muscly Finn and Jake as one character. But then the rest, it we don't get to spend a lot of time looking at this, and it would be great to just have a little bit more idle and a little bit more time to really soak in this screen.
I'll say a couple things about it. I mean, I really enjoyed this one. I mean, as an Adventure Time longtime fan, I appreciated it a lot. And like everybody said previously, it really captured not just the challenge, but like the challenge within, like reimagined in the context of like another IP, which is like a pretty interesting idea just from the get-go. I had to be like really nitpicky to even like come up with anything that I'm like, well, you could have done this better. But I think the one thing for me that just kind of stood out a little bit was this sort of swoop in at the end. Like all throughout the rest of the animation, there's actually like a pretty good sense of like creative like timing and spacing where there's like slows into really fast motions, and then right here at the end the actual swoop just kind of feels very even as it comes in, and it's like such a small thing, but it would maybe feel just a tiny bit better if there was a little bit of like a whoosh and it sort of like sped up through the wipe as it comes across. And I think that would also sort of like would be a great flow into the sort of like dust that sort of peters out here too, if there was a little bit more like power and speed to the swoop. So just sort of hanging back, in this sort of like anticipation into it a little bit more, and then speeding through, get the spacing to be like a little farther apart and speed through the swoop in front could have added just like a little bit more oomph to the end of this. And I agree on the static poses at the end. That's something that a few of us had noted. But at the same time, I can like appreciate that like truly held poses are like a thing from Adventure Time, but in 3D a little bit, it just, I don't know, it doesn't quite work as well in 3D as I think is when they do that in the show in 2D because of the medium difference. But it's pretty great. It's cool shot. I also just appreciate the flies because maybe this is from a different episode, but one of my favorite lines in all of Adventure Time is when Jake kills the fly and says, "I'm sorry you were born a disgusting fly and I had to kill you." And that entire episode about ghost flies is great.
Do you guys mind if I say a few things next?
Oh yeah, please go ahead.
So one of the things I really love about this piece is like this animator is not afraid to come like have depth, like he starts his shot off and it's like the guy's at the front of the camera here, then he goes to the back, and that can kind of be a really scary thing sometimes when you're animating. There's like that depth perception, and he kind of does it again here when he throws this fly to the camera. I love this sort of interaction he's getting with the audience, and sort of you always feel like the fly on the wall almost, if that makes sense. And then again, he does it here where he goes to the foreground and then comes in, swooshes past, goes right into the camera. And I just think it's beautifully done. One thing I did notice that could be made better was just this reaction here when this fly gets sort of stabbed. Maybe like his eyes could have scaled, or like something could have been a little bit more reactionary. The only reason I say it is just because he has these really nice reactions here on the flies when they're getting all beaten up. And I just feel the fly didn't really have any sort of reaction to this when he came down here. So maybe he could have had a moment there where the fly's eyes like scale up like or something, and then like throws it to the camera. But overall, yeah, one of my favorite pieces of the contest. I just love the way he's bringing us in and out of the shot, using the foreground, and then coming back in, it's flying in. I think it's beautifully done. I think maybe as well, once this fly slides down here, you could maybe have like some slime or something, a little bit of like a lens effect, because there's a lot of effects in it, and I don't know, like he's kind of got some cool stuff going on here. And also these hit marks here where he's beating up the flies. And I just feel that maybe there's an opportunity there for like a little bit of grease or something on the camera when this fly slides down here.
Fly grease.
Overall, really awesome.
I love how sinister his face is after that moment too. It, like reveals and he's like, yeah. Sort of the same moment now that we're looking at it. One of the things that's really good when you go through these punches is you're scaling up those arms and doing the multiples here to really feel that punch and get sort of like that cool smearing effect. But his arms, when you get into this big stretch, I know you're really like maintaining the mass of his arms, but they do get very thin. This is like a single pixel on my screen almost. So having like a little bit thicker through here, just because you have all those other lines in the background, might be good. Just because it's getting a little lost in the background. And like, I'm looking at this video quite large, but if I were to look at this video any smaller, those are going to be disappearing almost entirely from the background. And just so everybody knows, for Sing Sketch, you are able to mute it locally if you want to. I muted it for the stream, but if you don't want to hear the audio over and over again, you can mute it yourself. All right. Do we have any further thoughts from the rats on this piece?
Really awesome.
Just really good, yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's super dope.
It's been really hard to
I feel like we're
find,
being really picky here, but we have to try and pick out.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's been really hard to
overall,
actually
just
find
it's fucking
feedback.
like everywhere, like in and out, fucking around, and it's crazy trip that. It's like being on acid or something. It's great.
This moment when he does these, I think it was Nick was saying, "Oh man, look at those anticipation splits! Like, what a unique form of anticipation. Like, I guess it's like a dodge also, but using it in this way to like throw him up into this next move feels great. I feel like I have more just praise I want to heap on it that I want to say negative things. Looking at it, like Jake is the dog, right? He like straightens out a little here, like through this whole surfing thing. It starts feeling a little bit linear, like it's an entire like stick sort of moving through here. I feel like there could be like a little bit like a little bit more wiggle through there, like if I'm being like really, really nitpicky just for this moment. But it's really so excellent. Just nailed it. All right. And also, I'll say the names that are in the file titles, but not all of the file titles are somebody's name, I think. Or many of them weren't. We'll talk about that later. But in this case, I believe this is Dahvid Cuevas _01 MP4 submitted this. So can we, in the chat, get rats for Dahvid Cuevas? An incredible entry. Thank you so much, for real. Shook us up. Beautiful.